On this episode, we went to a questionable Brazilian restaurant, and now it's coming out of us like lava. We watch Bridesmaids, and you're listening to Geeked Out.
Popcorn in our hands, ready for the show. From the classics to the blockbusters, we're always in the know. Throwing references like confetti, we keep it real. Geeked Out Podcast, we here to make you feel. We're the critics you can trust.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Geeked Out. My name is Kyle.
Juan here.
And today we are moving into our second week of our female-led movie series. With my pick, I chose Bridesmaids, the 2011 smash hit comedy, which actually, this movie was released 15 years ago, 1 week ago today.
Okay.
I'm just kind of noticing that when I'm looking at my notes here, but
That's great. It doesn't feel that long at all.
no, it really
But,
doesn't.
you know.
But I will say, I suggested this movie because, and I don't think I'm alone in saying this, I think this might be one of the funniest comedies to come out in the past 20 years. And
Yeah.
in tying in with our female-led series, this qualifies sixfold, considering the 6 women centering.
Not too cool.
No, not quite. There's 6 of them. But I thought this would have been a really good choice. And I didn't realize until I started doing my rewatch that it's been
What?
quite a few years since I rewatched it.
Really?
Yeah, I would probably say it's been a good 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. I'd say it's been about that long too. But it's one of those movies that like you remember the majority of it, so when you revisit it, it's like it doesn't feel as long as it does.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, like I remembered the basic plot and obviously like the big key set pieces and the scenes, but there was a lot of stuff that I also didn't remember. And then I'm sitting there going, oh, I thought this was going to happen. Oh, that happens like 25 minutes later, but it's still there.
yeah.
So when this came out, was this a theater experience? I did not see this in theaters. I know that.
I definitely did not. I seen it. I think either a date night movie. A woman definitely into this movie, and I'm going to assume it was for a date, like for a date night. Because I would not have rented this or just stumble upon it on my own. Even though I believe I heard good things when it came out, that it was a hit and that it was really funny. I just had no interest at the time, and it would not have been that movie. I would have took a gamble on it if it was on Netflix or anything. So it was something that definitely would have had to have been introduced to me from an outside source, and I'm glad it did because a classic.
Yeah, I don't know where I would have seen this. Again, most likely it was probably my significant other at the time would have introduced it to me. But I mean, I could be wrong. It could have been me who found it. I'm really not sure. I do remember that just a couple of years before this, The Hangover came out, and that was obviously something that kind of took over everything. And then this was kind of following in that same vein, but it was a female-led movie. It was kind of put forth as almost like the female Hangover. I don't agree with that description, but I think that's kind of how it was marketed and or how it was discussed in like word of mouth between people.
Yeah,
But
I
I
could
think,
see the average moviegoer kind of saying that because it was the other smash hit comedy that and it had similar comedy, but not really, just sort of the same vibe when it comes to like the improv like comedic tone that both
yeah,
movies carry.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's the only comparison you can give it, and that's what people that aren't really movie buffs it would make sense why they would.
Yeah, and oddly enough, like it's funny because we've done a lot of movies from like the 90s and even the early 2000s. And those movies I can always be like, yeah, I most likely would have rented this for Blockbuster and whatnot. But when you get into this era, I wasn't it wasn't a Blockbuster thing anymore. It was a different streaming platform.
Yeah.
And once you get into that era, I have no idea when I can't remember the first time I saw so many different movies because it was like, yeah, that would have been just a Friday night on Amazon Prime or on Netflix or whatever.
Yeah.
So it all just kind of jumbles into, it was probably a streaming. I don't know.
But yeah,
And-
usually it's after a movie comes out of the theaters and into streaming because that gets the marketing push, and then usually a lot of people end up watching around that time. So it could
Yeah,
have
but I
been that
mean,
too. Could have
even
been
now, like even nowadays,
restaurant.
a lot of
That,
movies don't even come out in theaters anymore. They just go straight to streaming, and so that makes it even
especially
harder. And
comedies,
especially
especially
like for
comedies
me,
nowadays.
since movies, like as much as I love going to the movie theater, now that they've really jacked those prices up, it needs to be some like a real draw for me to go and spend the money to go sit in a movie
Yeah.
theater. Either that or it's something that I'm taking my kids to.
That's why you haven't seen a lot of comedies in theaters.
Yeah.
Most of them have been straight to streaming.
Yeah, because
And
those things, like if you're comparing a movie like a Star Wars or an Avatar or any of
or
those big
current
blockbuster high
and
budget
currently,
movies, you
yeah,
want
yeah,
to see
yeah,
those in theaters. But with a comedy, it's like, well, there's nothing really there that I need to see. So I can just watch that on my own TV at home. I'm not going to go spend that extra 30, 40, $50.
true. And I think it's just because so many comedies are going to streaming, condition the audience to just wait for streaming or expect it on streaming soon when it comes to comedic movies. Instead of going out there and putting it out in theaters for a while and they get breathe before bringing it over, because they brought it over and they exclusively come out in streaming. That's why comedy movies won't survive in theaters
Yeah.
unless you do you take a chance and you leave it in theaters for a while. One that's worthy of it being in it. But there hasn't really been, honestly,
No, and having
until
said that, I
recently.
remember in the early 2000s, late 90s, I think it was because the prices of movies were so much more affordable. Especially, we used to have the cheap Tuesday movie every week. I would go sit through a comedy, and I will say that watching a comedy in a movie theater with a group of people is so much more enjoyable than watching it by myself at
Mhm.
home on the TV, because you get that infectious group laughter and things like that. But it's just not worth it anymore for the
And
price
I,
that you're going to pay for something that is basically ends up being like a sitcom that's just 3 or 4 times as long that you could just watch at home.
and I think a lot of the comedies of the last 10, 20 years have all been trying to just mimic a Bridesmaid or mimic a Hangover or mimic a Superbad or mimic one of these classic movies that we got at that time. They aren't really doing anything to refreshen the genre. Every movie has that improv use the best line editing,
Yeah,
and people are kind of want something new that's different from that. And I
yeah.
think that also adds to that problem with comedy.
And I mean, I'll be honest, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. I think the last real comedy, like original comedy that I went and saw in theaters, I just looked up the date, would have been way back in 2008. And that was Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which now that's an original comedy idea with the whole Dracula musical and whatnot. And I remember me and a buddy of mine went and
Mhm.
saw that,
It's
and
a rom-com.
we walked out of that movie theater convinced that was one of the funniest movies of all time. Like, and I think a lot of that was the environment that we saw it in. Now, don't get me wrong, I still absolutely love that movie and I still would go to bat for it every day of the week. But there is something to be said about that. I can't think of another word other than almost like a mob mentality, but like when you get all those people together and it's just everybody's just there to have a good time and laugh. It's like going to see a
Mm.
comedy show live as opposed to watching it at home.
Yes. The absolute best way to watch a comedy movie is with an audience.
Yeah.
Whether the comedy is intentional or unintentional. With that in front of a crowd is especially when the crowd is almost laughing at it. That's the best experience you can have in a theater. But what's right next to it is a thoroughly good, laughing, enjoyable experience with a group of people at the movies. It's great.
Yeah. So let's get into the details of this movie. As I said, we're doing Bridesmaids, which was released May 13th, 2011, with a budget of 32.5 million, and it brought in a worldwide box office of just over 289 million. And this stands, so Judd Apatow was a producer of this movie. This is the highest grossing Judd Apatow comedy of all time. Now,
That makes sense.
put
It
that,
has such a
but
he's
think
got
about
his
the movies
fingerprints
that
all
he
over it.
made. Think about like how huge the movies that he made.
Yeah, he had a total influence on most comedies that came out in the 2010s, early 2000s, 2010 era.
Absolutely. I
And
mean, he couldn't like it seemed like he couldn't miss with like he had 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up. I mean, Funny People was meh. Like even This Is 40, Trainwreck. Like these movies were huge, and I was kind of shocked when I found out that this was his highest grossing movie. Obviously not as a director because he didn't direct this movie, but as a producer, I
I could
was
see
kind of
that.
blown away by that fact.
It seems like a movie that would have been a great date night movie and a movie that women would have shown up for by the droves.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I get it. I get it. I get it. Yeah, that demographic definitely carried that number for what it is.
Yeah. So this movie on IMDb sits at a 6.8 out of 10. The critics on Rotten Tomatoes have it at 89%, whereas the fans have it at a 76%. It was directed by Paul Feig, who has been on this podcast before as he was a member of the cast in the movie Heavyweights. If you remember that, he actually played the skinny camp counselor. That's Paul Feig.
Oh,
The movie was written
okay.
by Kristen Wiig and Annie Momolo. The movie stars Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph, Rose Byrne, Melissa McCarthy, Ellie Kemper, Wendy McClendon-Covey, Chris O'Dowd, and many, many others. When competition between the maid of honor and a bridesmaid, when there is a competition between the maid of honor and a bridesmaid, it is over who will be the bride's best friend. It threatens to upend the life of the out-of-work pastry chef, aka the maid of honor. Now, the basis of this movie, like the plot is pretty pedestrian overall, like just the general narrative of it, where, like I just said, so the plot is Maya Rudolph gets engaged. Her best friend, Annie, played by Kristen Wiig, is asked to be the maid of honor. And from the word go, she is competing with Maya Rudolph's new friend, Helen, played by Rose Byrne, who is constantly, whether intentional or not, I'm convinced it's 100% intentional. She's constantly trying to one-up Anne throughout this entire movie, and it kind of drives her off the
Of
deep
course
end
it is.
because she's already in a bad place. You find out that she had a bakery that she owned that kind of collapsed during the recession. She is having a hard time getting back on her feet. She has a very interesting roommate situation, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
every time something comes up for the wedding where Annie is supposed to help plan things as the maid of honor, Helen just constantly swoops in and takes over because she has the money, she has the connection, and things like that.
And
It's just the vying for the
mhm.
best friendsmanship, I guess, of Lillian, played by Maya Rudolph.
And you do at the end, towards the end of the movie, you do realize that there is a reason why she is trying to, she is intentional outstaging Annie, absolutely. And she has a reason. And you know them in the third act of the
Yeah, but I
and
mean, some of
yeah,
the
go ahead.
things she does it really excuse some of the behavior? Like,
No, it does not excuse it, but the movie's trying to establish, her character, and basically she's the foil, she's the thorn in her side, and they had to establish that. Sometimes it go a little bit over the top, but this is a comedy. They tend to do that.
now, I am gonna say, as much as I love this movie, I think so. There are certain parts of this that, if you've seen the movie, you know them. Like, if somebody just says Bridesmaids, there are probably 2 to 3 scenes that immediately will flash in your mind, and it's like, oh, I remember that one. And obviously, those are the big comedic set pieces. The stuff other than that, some of it I find, like, I found the romance between Annie and Chris O'Dowd's character, Officer Rhodes, I didn't find all that interesting. I don't know if I just felt there was a little bit of a lack of chemistry, or certain
I
parts of
think,
their
I
relationship
think
are a
that
little strange.
I think that ultimately is the problem with that. Even though I didn't really find that. that situation a problem. Maybe just the actor, but I get what they were going for. They just wanted it. He's not a perfect fantasy rom-com archetype character. He's a normal dude, and he looks like a normal dude. And you know, I understand his role in the movie. He's kind of the basically represents stability, and which Annie for the better part of the movie wasn't ready for. So I understand that. But yeah, they could have gotten an actor that had more chemistry with the star of the movie.
I think one of my biggest problems is I don't necessarily think so. This movie is about friendship and it's about Annie trying to get her life back on track. And I think that by throwing in the added aspect of a relationship, it makes it almost a little too messy. Whereas if they just kept it in terms of like her just keeping her relationship with Lily and that being the main focus, I don't think you needed the additional added pressure of her trying to find a boyfriend or anything like that. Because I mean, the movie opens with a very awkward and odd sex scene between Kristen Wiig and John Hamm. John Hamm playing Ted, and you can tell right off the bat that like you learn everything you need to know about Annie in the opening, what, 2-3 minutes?
Well, at the very least you learn that her love life is very rocky. You later find out that the rest of her life is just as rocky. But when you're first introduced, you realize, yeah, her her love life isn't going as well as she wished it did.
Yeah, but like it's even the thing of it shows her going to touch up her hair and her makeup in the morning so that when he wakes up and she's next to him, it doesn't look like she just woke up from a night of sleep. Like she's constantly wanting to make herself look as good as possible. And then immediately we find out that this guy has zero regard for her whatsoever. I would argue he doesn't even like her. Like he doesn't even want her there. He literally says to her, he says to her, I really want you to leave right now, but I can't think of what to say without sounding like a dick. Well, guess what? That wasn't what you say.
Yeah, and he's already established as a dick, so I don't understand why they couldn't just went all the way with it, just saying that, because that character and the way he's portrayed, he definitely would have just said the thing out loud. Little, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's I mean, that's the song they went with that.
Well, and the funny thing with this is this character is portrayed by John Hamm, who at this time when it came out in 2011, he is about halfway through his run on Mad Men, which it's funny because he almost the way he acts towards her, he almost seems like a modern day Don Draper, but he actually went uncredited in this movie because before this movie, he was predominantly in dramatic roles. And he didn't want audiences to be confused, being like, well, why is John Hamm this super serious actor in this? Like, I guess he didn't want people to be confused as if whether this is a comedy or a drama so I don't know if that's him giving too much credit to the general public or I don't know what it was, but it was an interesting decision on his part. And I mean, he plays this prick of a character insanely well.
Yeah, it's funny he didn't get credited because the reason why he got a lot of comedic roles after the fact is because of this role. So the fact
100%.
that he decided not to be credited was uncredited is interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that was his choice.
Okay.
So we talked about her. I do love though when she's leaving his house at the beginning and she goes to the gate that won't open and she decides to climb it and it starts opening while she's perched on top of it, like because it's almost like she's too proud to go back and ask him to open the gate. And then she's fucking riding it while it opens while all the neighbors are out there watching her.
Oh yeah. And they probably did film. This is a movie that they filmed like 50 takes for almost every scene, and they just went with the one that was funniest. Like a lot of movies, obviously, but this definitely was a more than usual, and it works, man.
Yeah.
I'm sure they had a whole interaction with people outside, but it worked better that she kind of just felt defeated in that moment and just went with it.
Well, it's super funny because, like you say, she's she's kind of failing in her love life. We find out that her ex-boyfriend left her when the business went under, and so she's now using this Ted as kind of a just a constant. He refers to her as a fuck buddy,
Yeah, and
and
I find it interesting that they introduce us to this character in the middle of this kind of mess that she's in.
which character?
Uh Annie. Because most movies we would have started at the beginning. Like this would have all happened as she already had her like as her business was failing and her husband
Oh, show the breakup and so on and so
they would have
forth.
shown the like, yeah, they would have shown that most movies, or at least a
I
very cliche, stereotypical movie, would have shown that aspect of it. But the fact that we're in the middle of it, of all those problems, like we're past that, and she's still going through it. She's still kind of a disaster. But you know, she had time to process it, and she's still going through it
yeah, there's
which is it's a bit refreshing when it comes to a lead character because it's not afraid to introduce us to a flawed disaster of a character.
yeah, I think that was a big positive of this movie, the way they did it that way. And like you say, she's kind of failing in her romantic life, and then she goes home and you meet her roommate, who I don't even have the man's name who plays her roommate. So I guess we're gonna do that live. So this is gonna be fantastic listening,
All
podcast
British.
listening. Yeah, his her roommate is played by Matt Lucas, and his sister is played by Rebel Wilson. This is Rebel Wilson's first movie, and they basically portray it as he's her roommate, and Rebel Wilson is like visiting from back home, and but they worded like she's been there for, they don't say, but I'm assuming probably anywhere between like 4 and 6 months, and even the relationship she has with them is, I mean, it's, I just shook my head watching it. Like you immediately feel bad for this character on every level, because especially like they even get into a point where they're like, oh, we need the money for the bills, and then they talk about how Rebel Wilson's character was reading, like going in her room and trying on her clothes and reading her diary, and which actually gave me probably my favorite line from Rebel Wilson in the movie, when she's talking about her diary and she's like, yeah, I didn't know it was your diary. I just thought it was a really sad handwritten book.
You definitely saw all the improvs with whenever she's on the screen. And that's why she got hired for sure. And she definitely is another character that since then, because of her role in this, has gotten a lot of comedic roles.
I like Rebel Wilson personally. I think she's pretty fun,
She's okay. She's just part of that club of the fat funny girl.
but she's not
Um,
anymore. She lost weight.
I mean, yeah, now, but when she had a run with another character, another actor's movie, where that's the character she portrayed in the movie, and it's fun, it's fine, but it does wear thin after a while.
Yeah.
But she was okay. She was okay. She never annoyed me. So
So when we start to we find out that Maya Rudolph tells Annie that she's engaged and asks her to be her maid of honor. And then we start to get into all the wedding festivity. And we start with the engagement party, which, I mean, first off, we meet the cast of, I'm going to say the cast of characters, the cast of the Bridesmaids, where we've got obviously Annie and Lillian, then you've got Helen, Melissa McCarthy as Megan, Ellie Kemper as Becca, and Wendy McClendon Covey as Rita. Now, for anybody who hadn't watched Gilmore Girls, or the first season probably of Mike and Molly, this movie is 100% the coming out party for Melissa McCarthy to worldwide audience.
yeah, it was a
And
breakout role.
she knocked it out of she was nominated for an Academy Award for this.
I
Like,
could see that.
like wrap your head around that.
No, I could see that honestly. Because that performance isn't not anybody can pull that off. You have to be a great physical comedian, a great improv comedian, and an overall great actress to be able to deliver the lines that she did in this movie, and just in the way that she did it. And honestly, it was giving me a very toned down, but like a toned down version of like a Chris Farley.
A
It was
little bit.
kind of giving a little bit. It was giving me those same vibes. And yeah, she knocked it out of the park. She's hilarious.
I mean, right from the first time you meet her when, she, and there, I noticed watching it this time, there are so many Office alumni castmates in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
When
And
when she first meets Annie and she says, "Oh, is this your fella?" And it's the guy, the tall,
oh,
he plays the
it,
security guard in the office. I
yeah.
can't remember his name. And
And that
she
was
says,
yeah, and that was the second time it happened. It happened
"Oh,
two
the guy,
seconds
yeah,
before that.
when she meets
And
Becca, oh, is this your man?" And it's like the guy looks like a
oh,
Russian
buddy,
mobster.
that's fucking. I had me dying because he kind of popped out of nowhere.
And then he's like, "You want
And
to go for a walk?" And she's like, "No, no, thank you."
and then it happens again, like not 2 minutes later. And
But I
again,
love it.
it hit just as much as it did the first time.
I love it
But
when
yeah,
she's introducing her to Ellie Kemper, to Becca, and she's like, "Oh, this is my husband. We just got married." And she's like, "Oh, is this your man?" "Oh, no, no, no." And she's like, "Oh, I feel so bad. Let's go back a minute. So this is my husband. You don't have a husband." I was like, "Oh my God."
yeah, yeah.
And
Every
then,
time Melissa McCarthy's character's on screen, man, it's like she literally takes the movie and she has it in a headlock. That's how much she doesn't just steal the scene. She has that motherfucker in a headlock tight because
well,
she is in complete control of whatever's going on when she's on that screen in that movie.
and this is one of my favorite lines of the movie is when she asks if this is your fella. And like I said, it's a security guard from the office. He's a very tall black guy.
Yeah, Hank,
And
right?
yeah, Hank, that's his name. I couldn't remember it. And she's like, "No, it's not." And he walks away. And Melissa McCarthy goes, "Good, because I'm going to climb that like a tree later."
Yeah, I think it was at that moment. From that moment on is when the movie Loki becomes hers is presented on
But
screen.
okay, I will say something. As much as I love Melissa McCarthy in this movie, I think that she is better served as a supporting actress. I don't. So the
100%.
movies that she is like either the lead
Up
or
front
like
and
a
center.
co-lead, I don't think she's nearly as strong.
No, she can't carry it by herself. She needs somebody to bounce off of. Yeah, she definitely plays better as a team player than a lead in a movie.
Yeah,
There's been some where she's been okay. Like Spy was really good. I really
I
like
haven't
that
seen
movie.
Spy.
Spy's really good.
I would say so. I would say like
That's
I've
the
seen.
only one I can name off the top of my head where it worked for her.
Well, I've seen her. She's the star in the movie Tammy. I didn't think that was very good. I didn't mind her in The Heat, and I didn't mind her in Identity Theft. But again, she's
But
playing off of
why?
Sandra Bullock and Jason Bateman.
Exactly. And even then,
They
it's a
do a
little
lot
bit
of
too
heavy lifting.
much. And it's too much because her shtick, it's good, but if it's too much, you lose the audience. It becomes stale and
Yeah.
people aren't checking for it.
Yeah. And every member of this bridal party has their own little personality quirks, I guess. So obviously we know about Annie. Helen is the rich, kind of one-up type person. Then you've got Rita, who is, I believe they say that she's Maya Rudolph's cousin. She's the one who's married with the 3 boys. And she
And
is
okay,
just,
yes,
I think she's hilarious.
she's hilarious. She was in that one show, The Goldbergs. I
The
love her.
Goldbergs, yeah.
She is genuinely a funny
But
actress.
anytime she's talking
I
about her kids, I was almost crying with laughter.
and okay, I can believe her. I can understand her having boys and boys being boys. They're gonna do what boys do.
I cracked a
But
blanket in half.
I refuse to believe that that kind of mom, the mom that she is with the personality that she has, would allow her boys to say F you to her and have the attitude that they have around her.
Yeah,
Just
I
because
know.
that
It almost
particular kind of mom, because she doesn't seem like a pushover.
no,
So it's an exaggerated take on that kind of a family,
but she
but
also seems like she's
that's just a
almost to
nitpick
the
for them.
point of giving up. So that might be why it's portrayed as that, like, because yeah, the scene you're referring to is a little bit later when, and I love the delivery when I was making this beautiful meal for my family, and my youngest walks in and says, Mom, I want to order a pizza. I said, we're not ordering a pizza. And he said, Mom, go fuck yourself. And she goes, he's 9.
Yeah. And it's just, I can understand they said that because the way she delivered it was funny. And they probably came up, that was either written in script already or they came up with that on the spot. And it was the funniest thing that day for that scene. And they just went with it. But again, when it comes to believability of, the personality that she is, I don't
And,
buy it with her kids being the way that they, but again,
and correct me if I'm wrong, you never see her husband, do you? Or her kids, I don't think.
you see the kids in the background. You see like their backs because they're playing video
Oh,
games
okay.
or some
Oh,
shit,
that's right,
watching
when
movies.
she's at home.
I don't think you see the husband.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got those. Megan, Melissa McCarthy is just all over the place. And then Becca is like this virginal girl next door, newlywed, has like rose tinted glasses on and thinks everything is sunshine and rainbows to the
Yep.
point where she suggests the theme for the bridal shower be Pixar.
Yeah, she represents like the millennial, youthful, naive, but again, that almost virgin because she's only been with one person type of character. Same kind of character that was in the movie you mentioned before, Saving Sarah Marshall. Remember that like newlywed couple?
Yes, exactly.
It had that same kind of character, same kind of vibe.
Yeah. But which is why I think my favorite part with her, I mean, my favorite part with all of them is probably the, the bridal store, but with her is when they're on the plane and Rita's telling her like how miserable her life is and all this other
Wow.
stuff about her husband and this and that. And Ellie Kemper just leans forward to the stewardess and goes, I would like a glass of alcohol.
Yeah, and like, she plays that character very well, that like, timid.
She's even kind of like that in The Office.
Yeah, and she's in like another series where she's the star, where she
Kimmy
plays
Schmidt.
like a
Yeah.
character that is new to the world, even though she's lived in the world, but there's a reason why. But again, it's just another naive, new to the world, fish out of water type of character. And she plays it well because she low key kind of has played that throughout her career.
Yeah. Now, at this engagement party, we get what I think to me is probably one of the more, what I would call my probably most cringy scene in the movie. And I don't mean cringy the way that people use it nowadays. I mean, like, I was uncomfortable watching this, even back when
That
I
was the
first saw
reason.
it.
That's the
And
point.
I know that was the joke of it, but I felt that it went on too long, that it became unfunny and more irritating with this back and forth toast competition, whatever you want to call it, between Annie and Helen, which
Yeah.
I get that Helen is probably the one throwing this. If you're not a parent, a best man, or a maid of honor, you don't get to make a speech at any event.
I mean, it's taboo, but some people still do it. You get enough drinks in them. And yeah, this movie blends a lot of different kinds of comedy. It has physical comedy, it has improv comedy, and it has that cringy The Office Michael Scott kind of humor. And if you don't like that kind of humor, you're not, or at least you can stand it, but it's not your favorite or what have you. This might not be your favorite scene. And yeah, it went on a smidgen too long for sure, but I think because of the moment was so cringy that every second felt 10 times longer than what.
Yeah. So starting with the engagement party, we get, I believe it's 4 really big scenes with the actual quote unquote bridesmaids of the movie. That's the first one. The second one is quite possibly one of the most iconic comedic scenes of the 2010s, if not the past, since I don't know how long, but it's the Brazilian restaurant leading into the bridal store where they're trying on the dresses, the food
And
poisoning scene.
I wonder if like Brazilian restaurants took a hit that year
I don't
or
know.
like
I never really looked into that.
the years following because yeah, at least for bridal dinners.
So I mean, obviously to set it up, they go to this little dive, this hole in the wall, and Annie is the one who picked out the restaurant, and Lillian says, like, oh, guys, don't worry. I know it looks like crap, but Annie does this all the time. She finds these gem restaurants where the food is just absolutely to die for. And they go in and they're all eating, and Helen is the only one who doesn't eat any of the meat. They leave from there and go to this super hoity-toity, upscale, bougie bridal store, which, of course, Helen knows the saleswoman again, so she gets them in without
Recognized
an
her
appointment.
immediately. She said her name immediately.
Yeah. Oh, Helen, is that you?
Like, damn, all right, that's
She
fun.
knows her well enough to recognize her voice.
From what? Yeah, immediately, which is crazy.
Now, the scene it's from the moment they walk in and Melissa McCarthy
It's
burps.
like that's a foreshadow. It's a foreshadow moment. But if you're paying attention to her, that whole scene, her stomach is slowly fucking up more and more and more. Only
Well,
until she makes it sound loud enough for everybody to hear that it infects everybody else.
but no, it's funny because she burps right when they walk in the door, and somebody goes, "Jesus, Megan," and she goes, "I'm going to be honest, I'm not even sure which end that came out."
And I
And then,
think
of
she is
course,
sweating. Like you can
they
start
all
to
are.
sweating. Yeah, yeah.
And of course, they get to look at the bridesmaids' dresses, and they find out that Helen is getting some French designer to design Lillian's wedding dress in Paris. So they're going to look at bridesmaids' dress. And the one that she picks out, Annie looks at it and it's $800. To which Helen replies, "Oh, great, it's on sale." And Annie kind of looked like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" So she goes and picks a different one. The girls all try on different dresses, and this is when it begins. Maya Rudolph comes out. They've put her in a wedding dress designed by this same woman. It's a couple years old, but it's to kind of give them an idea. And Melissa McCarthy is the one who starts. Then you get Rita and Becca, and they're all just out both ends. And one of the funniest lines I found was Rita when she goes, "I just need to get off this." She goes, "Pick whatever dress you want. I just need to get off this white carpet."
And
And of
yeah,
course,
you
you get the
know,
iconic. She's throwing up. Melissa McCarthy comes in, has to take a shit in the sink. I can't even talk about it with. I'm almost crying thinking about the scene.
yeah, and it's one of those things that this movie does a few times and pays off brilliantly. That slow build into the crescendo of the scene, and this is a perfect example of it. It's the reason why this scene is the most memorable
Yep.
is be
Wait, 'cause
is because of that slow build up, and then you get fucking hit with with poop, but you don't see
yeah.
it.
Nope. You
You
see
don't
nothing.
see
All you see is
anything.
that. The only thing you see is you see a little bit of vomit when Rita goes in, and then Becca comes in and throws up on top of her head.
Yeah. And I guess if it was a more, you could have easily have shown more if you wanted to. I'm glad you didn't.
You don't need
And
to. Their
it's refreshing.
reactions. It's
Yeah.
it's not the fact that they're getting sick. It's the way they're reacting to it. And then you've also got the juxtaposition of Annie in the fitting area, the display area, you want to call it, with Helen, and Helen's going, "Oh yeah, it's everybody got food poisoning from that restaurant." She's like, "No, I had the same thing they had, and I feel fine." Meanwhile, she is pouring sweat, and it's like she's refusing to admit it because she's the one who suggested the restaurant, so she doesn't want to be the one responsible for all this. And then it's when she says, if anything, I'm hungry. I just need a little snack." And she gets her a Jordan almond, and when she starts eating it, it's the quietest but the most, like, she's
You know
trying to
she's
look so
lying.
satisfied.
You know she's
And
bullshit.
absolutely. I read a thing
But
that she had a bottle of water that every between takes she was spritzing all over her face to make it look that much more soaked in sweat every
believable.
time the camera would turn back on.
hmm
And
It's believable. It's funny. It definitely worked.
and then it's the Maya Rudolph running out the front door. This is My dad loves this movie, and this is his favorite scene of the movie.
Of course.
Is
It's
Maya
because,
Rudolph going across the street, going, "It's happening, it's happening."
and this is part of the reason why this is such a beloved movie. More so for women, but men also like this movie, which is rare for like a female-led comedy. I think overall this movie works and it's concentrated into this scene is because yeah, the shock of these, attractive women pooping, like it's the poop joke and it's a timeless joke amongst men that will never grow tired.
Yep.
And it's the physicality, the physical humor that's involved in the scene, and just and mixed with being a very well written, well timed comedic, like the overall comedy that's also happening into one just memorable moment.
Yeah, and I think I feel that it's all kind of capped off with a bit of an exclamation point because both Annie and Helen run out front to watch Maya Rudolph go across the street, and the camera just focuses in on Annie, and she goes, "Oh, you're really doing it, huh? You're shitting in the street."
And they're not like exactly, and they didn't go over the top with it. They didn't have her farting, they didn't have
Nope.
fart sounds or pooping sounds or the sound of the poop, you know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? Like diarrhea like sounds. They didn't have to do that. And they could have totally have done that if it was a different director. You would have guaranteed those type of moments or those type of sounds would have been in it, but they didn't have to.
No.
We know what's happening in our imagination and in moments like that work as well, if not better, than showing it or hearing it.
Now, when they go to the Brazilian restaurant, there's a scene where Lillian goes to the bathroom and Annie brings up, now it's important for the plot, Annie brings up ideas for the bridal shower. And she's like, Lillian's always wanted to go to Paris. It's her favorite place in the world. She's always dreamt of it. So why don't we bring Paris here and we'll do a Paris themed bridal shower? And
Which
everybody,
is it's a genuinely good idea.
It's a great idea.
And then, someone's
But
jealousy.
This is where we get Becca suggesting the Pixar, and then we get Melissa McCarthy going, I'm just going to throw it into the ring, female fight club.
Again, I think that moment was only put in because that was the funniest thing she said all day, or that was the funniest thing someone threw out for her to say. Because it's like, all right, come on, man. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the way she says it, how jarring of a thing contrasts to the Pixar recommendation is, but it works. It's funny.
And yeah, you're right. Helen immediately says, "Oh, the Paris thing is so overdone. We'll figure something else out." Yada yada yada. And
she comes out and just beat the shit out of her.
Yeah. And then the next thing they try and figure out, so the third set piece is the bachelorette party, which Annie suggests they go to, I think it's Lillian's uncle's cabin or something like that. And immediately she hits send on an email and her phone rings. And Helen's like, yeah, I don't think a cabin is the best idea. Maybe something like Vegas which Helen doesn't seem to me the type of person who would do Vegas. I feel like she would do more of a high end type thing, but regardless. And then all the girls kind of outvote Annie and they end up going to Vegas. And then our next big set piece is them on the plane, which all the girls are in first class, but because Annie can't afford it, she's in coach. Sitting, and the woman she's sitting next to who constantly thinks they're going to crash is actually Kristen Wiig's writing partner, Annie Momolo, who wrote this movie with her. And the guy who Melissa McCarthy sits next to is her real life husband. Melissa McCarthy's real life husband.
You could tell the chemistry is just the way they're bouncing off each other. They definitely seem like they have known each other for years.
Yeah. And this is another, I mean, all these scenes Melissa McCarthy shines because this is she thinks he's an air marshal. She's constantly hitting on him. We get the scene where she lifts her leg at the bathroom door.
Which at first, this movie is at this point just established this character as just being this very spontaneous, wild card of a character. And when she pegs this guy as being air marshal, you don't believe it because she's a very.
You think she's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and she says a wild shit, so it doesn't carry any weight of she knows what she's talking about. Until, after this scene plays out, you realize that she knows more than she leads on.
Well, I like, and she's like, I get it, son, no carry on. You didn't put anything in the overhead. I get it. You're an air marshal. Where do you keep your gun? He's like, I'm not an air marshal. I'm just going to take a nap. And she goes, good call. I'll take the first watch. And he just, as he closes his eyes, he goes, no, near Marshall. No need to take a watch.
And like again, yeah, because you haven't given no information much of this character, Melissa McCarthy's. You understand exactly why she pegs right away towards the end of the movie,
I was
and
going to
it's
say,
like,
had you
okay,
gotten her backstory before this, you would have totally
not a
believed it.
yeah, absolutely, but the scene would not have played off, wouldn't have had such a good as a payoff as it did,
No.
and
And
yeah,
so we get
go
that scene. We get Rita and Becca. This is when they're sitting next to one another, and Becca's talking about, "Oh, I can't wait till I'm married as long as you, and I have these kids." And Rita's like, "You're fucking insane. Like you've only been with one person. Like to her, it doesn't make any sense." So you've got that little storyline. You've got I keep wanting to call
I
her
mean, it's
Lula, but
kind of
Lillian and Helen, and then you've got
for the
Annie who's
scene,
afraid to fly, and Helen just gives her, I want to say like Xanax, or she gives her 2 pills to calm her down, which don't work. So then she gives her a fucking, she called it scotch. This thing is filled almost to the rim. It ain't unless it's scotch and soda, nobody is filling a scotch glass that's that tall. But
And how a comedy works is if you're afraid to fly, you're definitely going to be seated next to
the person
the
who, yeah,
one person that nobody who's afraid of flying should sit next to. And I'm glad they picked this actress because I believe this woman to be out of her mind insane just by how she approached the character and the things she was saying. It was very believable. I
well,
would
like I
have
say,
freaked.
that's her writing partner for this movie.
Oh yeah, she knows what she's doing. She's really good, and she probably does improv. The majority of the actors in this movie you could tell they have an improv background. Um,
Yes.
and that lady was great because if I was sitting next to her and she was saying the things that she was saying, I would have freaked the fuck out. I'm not gonna lie, I would have freaked the
But
fuck out.
wouldn't you freak out more when Annie starts going, there's a colonial woman on the way?
Right? I thought they were gonna show it. I think it would have been funnier if they showed it because it would have shifted the tone to all of a sudden it's a Twilight Zone episode. If you know, you know.
Because what does she say?
That
She's
would have
like
just added it to
she's
it.
like churning butter or something.
Yeah, that would have
And
been a
she's trying
crazy
to
thing to
sneak up
see.
to first class. And oh God,
And the whole thing with the bald flight attendant guy that was pretty funny.
your name's
That was a very
Stove.
right, very childish. Another side of another style of comedy that works
That
for this
felt
movie.
very SNL.
SNL, just
Like
yep, a very just juvenile.
I feel like I've seen Kristen Wiig play that character on SNL.
Well, yeah, her there's snippets of her characters that she's played on that throughout this movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Or at least her comedic style, and how she does a lot of her comedic moments or whatever, just her style of comedy in general. I feel like she has signature things that she does. Yeah, it definitely it's recognizable if you were a fan of Christian Wiig.
Yeah, and I mean it kind of seems like this flight ends up being a last straw because Lillian finally says to her, like, I think you're under a lot of pressure, a lot of
It's
stress.
not even her fault either. It was like she
No, it's
was
not.
drugged. She was drugged and she mixed. You're not supposed to mix medication with alcohol. You're just fucking
No.
be out of your mind. And that's exactly what happened. So
That's what
like,
she said. She's like, take my scotch, it'll give those pills the little kick they need.
yeah, but you do understand where her friend,
Lillian?
Lillian. Yeah, you understand where she's coming from.
Absolutely.
She's trying to unburden the stress for her friend. And she also, wants an ideal
She wants her wedding to be the way
wedding,
she envisions it.
right?
Yeah.
And but you sympathize with Annie so much because but
Well, it's hard not to because
yeah, it's
she
hard
she
not.
tells her that Helen's going to plan the shower because it's going to be a little too much for her. And she goes back home and her roommates tell her that she has to move out, so she has to move back in with her mom. And
Hmm.
then she gets into an argument with a 15-year-old girl at her work, and she calls her a C word and gets fired. So it's like now she's really hitting rock bottom. And to quote the cop, she still hasn't gotten her fucking taillights.
I feel like the entirety of the third act. Okay, the first two, three acts or whatever. It's a comedic drama. By the third act, as soon as they leave that plane, it becomes a dramatic comedy.
Yeah,
Like the tone shifts so hard,
yeah,
you feel it, but because there's so much emotion coming from this third act and there's so much payoff from the emotion that's been building from the first three acts onto the last act that you don't mind it even though you recognize it and you're just going with it and you're throughout the movie you are rooting for Annie ultimately even though she's fucking up her own life and you're seeing it you're still rooting for her though.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, there's one more aspect of the wedding get-togethers that we have, and it's the wedding shower, which
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
the first it starts with the invitation that she gets, which number one, I've been invited to many weddings. I've known people who've been invited to a lot of showers. I've never seen a box invitation. But then she opens it, there's stuff in it, like I think it's like a candle, a couple other things. And then she lifts the lid of this little box, and there's a live monarch butterfly that flies out.
Oh yeah, this was the final nail in the coffin for what's it, Lilith?
Lillian.
For her, Lillian. Sorry, Lillian. Her character. Yeah, this was the final nail in the coffin for Annie there, because this entire thing was her big crescendo, her biggest, over the top, impressive thing that she could have done.
Yeah.
Besides
And and
adding
Helen's
pairing that with her gift that she's going to give her.
Well, yeah,
Um,
Helen's hosting it at her house, which apparently is the biggest estate in fucking North America. Because number one, she drives halfway down the driveway. A guy meets her with fresh squeezed
oh
lemonade.
man,
Then he tells
robot,
her,
robot butler.
"Go over the second bridge to the stables," and then she rides a horse from the stables to the house. And she walks in, and what does she see? The whole theme is Paris, just like she had suggested that Helen vetoed. Go fuck yourself, Helen.
hmm And again, it's not just Paris. It's that, yeah. Plus, when you leave, you get a puppy. Like everything had to be over the absolute can't
A
be
puppy with a
top
pink beret.
top. This was, yeah. She did this to spite Annie.
Mm-hmm.
And she did it so that she put her all into it. She did something that Annie could never top in her entire life.
Yep.
It was her nuclear weapon.
Because a lot of it, even when it's about money with Helen. Even when they're on the plane, she says that Annie can take her seat because everyone should experience first class at least once in their life. Like it's all little backhanded remarks
Very
about
peasantry.
how much better she is than Annie. And like you say, this is just that final set piece. And when you get to the point of giving the gifts, Annie gives this sweet, really adorable, from the heart gift of because she's moving from Milwaukee to Chicago, Lillian is. So she gives her a box filled with all of her favorite things from her favorite stores in Milwaukee, which is such a nice gift for two friends who are as close as they are. And that is immediately followed up with Helen going, "Well, I was so busy planning, I didn't have time to get you a gift, so it's just a card in an envelope." And then she opens the card and she bought her plane tickets to fucking Paris so that she can go and have her vacation and have her dress fitting and so on and so forth. And I didn't know what was going to happen, but as I'm watching the movie, before Annie said anything, I went, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And when she said
Yeah.
that, I went, "You're goddamn right. You get some, Annie." And she fucking goes nuclear on this party, and deservedly so. I mean,
I
probably
mean, the
didn't have to
cookie,
cause the scene that she did, but
the cookie
I
didn't
mean,
deserve it.
the cookie and the chocolate fountain.
Leave the cookie alone. I love cookies. That's my favorite dessert. So when she destroyed that beautiful piece of art, edible art, I kind of,
And she's a
I felt some
baker.
kind of way. I felt some kind of way. Yeah. Is that some type of hate crime? I don't know, but
So she knows how
uh,
hard that is or how much work that would take.
exactly. But it was the final straw for her. So all she was seeing was red. She
Yeah.
had to crash. That's what she did. She crashed the fuck out.
I will say this is my favorite Maya Rudolph line delivery in the movie
The
when
puppies.
no,
Fucking puppies. Like, come on.
it's I know it's ridiculous, but it's
The
when
party favor.
she says, "You've got your head so far up Helen's ass, and it's probably perfect bleach asshole." And she goes, "It is, and I know that because I'm with her, and I had my asshole bleached, and I love my new asshole."
Yeah, they didn't. I mean, the movie didn't really give her a lot of funny things to say. That wasn't really
Which is odd because it's fucking Maya
role in the movie.
Rudolph.
Yeah, I mean, they probably got her because of the chemistry with
I guarantee
Kristen Wiig.
When Kristen Wiig wrote it, she would have approached Maya Rudolph, and it was like the two of them are probably such good friends that it was like, yeah, I'll
Yeah,
absolutely be.
yeah, they're probably good friends in real life. I wouldn't doubt it. They came up around the same time on the same show, so it makes sense that they would have a deep relationship, and it definitely makes their friendship in the movie believable.
Yeah.
You know,
So, like you say, the puppies as party favors, one doesn't make any sense because how are you
a fucking
guaranteeing that all of
puppy.
these people are going to be taking care of it properly? And fucking Megan
It's
takes
just
9
yeah, and you see him throughout the movie. Not all 9, but you do see him throughout the movie, which is
when
funny.
she
It's an
drives by in her
ongoing little
van.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
funny.
because the next time we see Megan is when she shows up at Annie's to be because Lillian basically says to her, if this is how you're going to be, don't bother coming to the wedding at all. And
Yeah,
Megan shows
it's
up.
it's basically if this was a rom-com, this would be the moment where the couple breaks up.
Yes. Yeah, and Megan shows up to try and basically say to her, like, you still have like a friend, and she's basically saying her, like, who cares about you and who wants you to be okay, yada, yada, yada. And this is when we kind of get a little backstory into Melissa McCarthy when you find out that she was teased in high school, so she did everything she could to study, and now she works for the government. She's like, I know where all the nukes are, I know the codes, but you can't fucking tell anybody. And then she's like, a lot of shopping malls. You can't say anything to anybody.
Yeah,
Which, like,
go ahead.
also, which, like you said, had we found that out beforehand, the whole air marshal thing, we would have believed her because she would know what to look for.
Yeah, and it would have killed the comedic or a little bit. It would have took a little bit away from, the comedy
Yeah.
in that moment because we have no idea what she knows. You know what I mean? We don't know what kind of, we don't know her backstory. And when she is acting like life, bullying Annie, trying to get her to fight back, it's something that women aren't used to seeing, but this is a very man thing to see. This is a kind of conversation that like a father would have with his son.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that kind of writing
Like, get your head out of your ass and get to work type thing.
that and like interjecting things a man would go through with women, giving that perspective is it's just part of the reason why this movie is so beloved amongst not just women, but men too, because it's that kind of situations that a man can relate to.
Yeah.
Even though the entirety of the movie, you can't really relate not as much as a woman, but in that moment, everyone can,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
especially men.
Yeah, so I mean, she decides she's gonna get back to it. She bakes a cake as an apology for Rhodes, the cop, who we haven't really talked about
Okay,
because
can I just say something?
sure.
That character, the cop, the thing that he says to her when mentioning when he finds out that she has the bakery, he mentions cream puffs.
Yep.
Why didn't Andy make him cream puffs?
I was wondering the exact same thing. But she makes the cake in the shape of a carrot because they had carrots outside the convenience store.
Cream puffs would have been a way better payoff.
I agree.
I get it though. I get it. I understand. But it's a nitpick, but that would have made, it would have elevated them just a smidgen more.
Yeah, we get a quick little montage of her doing that, and she finally gets her taillights fixed. It's like she's really actively trying to better herself, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's the morning of the wedding, and Helen shows up because they can't find Lillian, and everybody's kind of panicking and freaking out, so they go break a lot of laws to try and get Rhodes' attention for him to help look her up, and they find that she is just at her old apartment in Milwaukee. So they go there, and we get the kind of trope of most wedding movies of oh, I'm nervous, and after today, I'll never come back to this
Oh,
apartment. I'll be
jitters.
moving. Like it's the existential crisis of, am I sure I want to do?
Yeah, those jitters at the last minute jitters or something.
Yeah. And then this fucking wedding dress.
It's not even the same one. I thought it was supposed to be the exact same one from the.
No, because the one from earlier was a design from like 2 years previous, so it's out of style, quote unquote. And the woman was making like a custom gown for her, a brand new one. This
Lord.
thing is one of the ugliest dresses I have ever seen on television or movie.
It's pretty. It's pretty bad. It's
And I
pretty
love
bad.
when Annie's like, "Oh, it's okay, we can fix it," and she's like, "Do you have a chainsaw?"
You would need it. All the
Now,
accessory material that was on that.
here's my question. We cut from that to the wedding, and Annie is there in her bridesmaid's dress. How did she get a bridesmaid's dress if she was kicked out of presume if she was kicked out of the wedding, so she wouldn't have been able to go for a final fitting. So how does that dress fit her the way it's supposed to if she probably wouldn't have been there for the final fitting?
It's a small plot hole for sure. I know they could have easily said something to to answer that question, but they didn't. But it's
Yeah.
fine.
And we kind of skipped over that during the whole montage of them trying to get the cops' attention. Annie and Helen kind of bond because we find out Helen is miserable because her husband's always traveling, and she thinks that people only like her because she's good at planning parties, and people almost like she thinks that people use her, which is very possible.
And you
Uh,
kind of got a glimpse of her life not being as good as she's portraying it when
mhm.
she's talking to her stepchildren, and then her stepchildren basically
Oh,
just,
fuck off, Helen.
yeah. That was your major clue that
Yeah.
things aren't all it seems with her, and that she is just one of those people that is trying to portray this perfect social perfection, and and yeah, you realize in that car with Annie that she's a very lonely person, and she's seeking one of those characters that's seeking some type of validation from you know a best friend that she doesn't
And
have much
and
gain out of.
Helen's husband, played by David Wallace from The Office.
Oh, okay.
I just recognize him. That's not the actor's name. That's his character on The Office. But
Yeah, Chief Financial Officer David Wallace.
yeah, so they, like I said, we cut to the wedding. It's this whole massive thing, and we get when they're at the apartment. Maya Rudolph talking about Helen went way over, like almost out of control, and she's like, "My dad can't afford the wedding anymore." And then the one final thing that Helen does, and she says it to Annie. She's like, "This is the last thing, I promise." Is she gets Lillian's favorite group, Wilson Phillips, to come, and they perform "Hold On," their big famous hit song. And
I
I
didn't know
love
the
that when
band
they come out. I love when they come out. Her dad goes, "I am not paying for this shit."
Hell yeah, that's a black man right there. That
But
is a black father for sure.
that right there, the scene where you get just Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph, and they're doing like their little dance and mouthing. That right there, so like it's just watching two people who are legitimate, genuine, good friends having fun on camera.
It just solidifies what the movie's about. These two
Yeah.
best friends in their adulthood, just trying to navigate life, and longtime best friends who, for lack of a better term, could have drifted apart. A lot of adult friendships end up that way, you know what I mean? Or lifelong friends.
Yep.
And we're just kind of seeing the struggles and the complexities of a relationship like that. And yeah, you've got two great people who are good friends in real life to portray it. And yeah, you've seen it in that moment right there.
Yeah. I mean, the final is they leave for their honeymoon. Helen has done her one last solid now for Annie, as she called Rhodes to come pick her up.
Hey,
They
that's not
kiss. They live
not the
happily
last
ever
time,
after.
maybe.
Yada yada. I don't think they last all that long, but that's just my own. And that's Bridesmaids, and we go back into the credits, and we get to watch the
Oh,
performance again, with a lot of focus
it's so
being
flat.
on Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph, and it's,
Oh, okay.
like I said,
I
it's
thought you
just
were talking
fun
about
to
the other scene.
watch. Which other scene?
Exactly. Between Melissa McCarthy, her husband.
Oh God, the sex tape. My God.
I'm so
I don't
glad that they put that in after the movie and not in, because that's the kind of humor I was kind of expecting throughout this movie, or at least in moments, and we didn't get that. And I'm glad because that would have ruined the formula that they had.
see
And
what that ruined for me is all I kept thinking was this is a
macaroni
real life
sandwiches,
husband and wife. Is this what they're really like?
maybe. Wouldn't you like to know?
Yeah, that scene was really strange. I mean, I did chuckle, but at the
It's
same
good.
time, I was like,
It's not the same
"This is
tone of the
fucking
movie.
weird." No, it's not.
It's just they just wanted to they just
To me,
filmed
this
something
is
crazy and wanted to put it in the movie.
to me
They
this is
couldn't, so
almost the
they put it in the
equivalent.
end.
To me, it's almost the equivalent of the scene in Road Trip where Tom Green puts the mouse in his mouth. Like it's just so off the wall compared to
It's
what the
so
rest of the movie
unnecessary.
is.
Exactly. It just they were smart enough to leave it at the end. You could do anything you want then. That doesn't ruin the overall tone of the movie
Yeah,
in general. And yeah, I'm just glad because they could have went way more over the top with so many different things, but they didn't. And with a comedy, it's probably hard not to go down that road. And if
yeah,
you can hold back, not rely on something like that, and you just let it be what it is, it can produce a better product. In this case, I think was the better choice to leave
yeah.
that at the
I agree. But that's going to bring us to the end of Bridesmaids. And unless there is something that we did not touch on, I think we can move into our final thoughts. If that's, unless you got something else you wanted to bring up.
The cop, I think he's kind of a bad at his job. He kind of like let Annie do his job for him with the
Just a bit.
radar gun. And did he just leave work
Yes.
in the middle of his shift to go on a date?
Well, at the end, when he picks her up at the wedding, that's what he says. He's like, I'm still on duty. I have to put my uniform back on. Otherwise, they'll think I just stole the car if I'm driving it in civilian clothes.
But the first
So,
time he takes it to a bar and he's still in his uniform,
oh, I think that might have been the end of his shift.
how do you
I don't
the
know. I'm just assuming.
I assumed he just left his fucking, he just took her to at that moment he asked her, he just took her and met up with the damn bar there. But if, I don't know, where,
Like I said earlier, I just think his whole character and their whole arc relationship didn't really necessarily need to be as big of a focal point, if in the movie at all, personally.
yeah, you could have
And
kept that
I
out of the movie,
also,
would have been fine. But
I think the movie's a little too long. I think it's like 2 hours and 5 minutes. I think you could have cut a good 15 to 20 minutes out, and a lot of it probably would have been the scenes with him.
yeah, it could have been a studio head decision to put it in there because a lot of movies with women need to have some kind of
You
romantic
got John Hamm,
lead.
who wants a roadie.
Yeah, you could have done that, and that could have been the he could have took over that role, but not in the happily ever after kind of way. More of a
Yeah.
learning a lesson from being connected to a terrible human being kind of thing,
Yeah,
learning your
when he
independence kind of shit.
when he tells
But
Annie to take a little lap nap.
yeah, and when she left that one potential date to go hook up with him, it's very real because
Yeah.
a lot of us have been there. She wanted that instant gratification, but we all were like, "Honey, what are you
Yeah,
doing?"
it's a bad look for her
And
character.
they could have played more into that and spent more time with that relationship, and that would have helped with her character arc a little bit more. Instead of injecting this unnecessary romantic plot, 'cause it wasn't necessary, but it just felt like it was something an executive or a higher up told the director needed it.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we missed?
Oh shoot. Oh, I like the Bill Cosby bit. That was pretty funny.
Oh, don't
Uh,
spell with a Z. Don't bring it up. He'll get really upset.
and the Castaway bit. I like how that
Oh
had a good
yeah.
payoff. Had a good payoff in it. But other than
One
that,
of
that's pretty much
one of the saddest moments in movie history, Wilson getting away.
right. And it's almost the same kind of situation with Annie, where she broke up with her Wilson,
Yeah.
her closest bond that she had, and it was just an ironic scene that it's one of those scenes where because of the motion just before that scene leading into that, you're both sad, but you're also laughing because just the timing of it all and just the way they set it up. It's both funny and sad at the time, which is rare. It's a very rare thing.
Yeah. So I think we can move into final thoughts now on this movie. And I was the one who suggested it, so I'll go first. As I said when I suggested this movie, when I picked this one, I love this movie. I think it is, as I said in the beginning, quite possibly one of the funniest movies of the past 20 years. Possibly one of the funniest movies of the 2000s. From start to finish, I was laughing out loud while watching it, and it's not just your typical overt, obvious slapstick type humor. There's a lot of little subtle humor and just quiet little lines that are really funny on their own. I thought the writing by Kristen Wiig and Annie Momolo was fantastic. The acting was great. Again, aside from Chris O'Dowd, who I think didn't really necessarily need the way he was in the movie, but that's just an opinion. The chemistry worked great. The way that all of the girls get together, and the way they just kind of bounce off each other and play off one another, I think was really good. It's a super fun movie. It's super enjoyable, very relatable, whether man or woman, because I'm sure we've all been through these types of, maybe not quite this extreme, but issues with our friends and growing apart and having conflicts and things like that. Yeah, overall, I could not recommend this movie any higher than I do. And I'm going to give this a solid 8.5 out of 10, sheerly on just my personal enjoyment of it. And as I said, this movie was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, one for screenplay and one for Melissa McCarthy as Best Supporting Actress. So that's a pretty impressive thing. And yeah, highly recommend. One.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely is one of the funniest comedies of the 2010s, that era. Not only that, it's one of the very few comedies that fully understands just how messy adulthood feels in almost all aspects of adulthood. I think ultimately it works because, underneath all just the chaos, there's real emotional honesty holding everything together. The through line just being friendship. I think that's why it's a comedy that still works a decade later, which you can't really say about many of other comedies of that era. And again, comedy overall is the one that works just because you blended very well different styles of comedy, and it just somehow, which is rare, doesn't it works all it all works together. Um, yeah, Kristen Wiig was great. She you laugh with her, you laugh at her, you also cringe for her. You're also rooting for her. Sometimes you're doing all of that at the same time. And I think that is the kind of balance that's hard to pull off. She does great. Um, I what also works is just the emotion that this movie has. Yeah, it's very relatable. More so if you're a woman, but I think there is enough of just how Kristen Wiig's character is just handling things and where she is at life. Anyone can relate to. The supporting cast obviously definitely works, even though you don't get enough characters and others. They all work together. The chemistry with every single character is great. There isn't any annoying character or a character that is believes like they're in a different movie. I think everyone understood the assignment. They did very well. Say weaknesses would probably be there might have been a couple bits that go on a little bit too long. Being a comedy subjective. That sometimes it can be too long and sometimes or some of the comedic, even though there are a lot of styles, one or two might not work for you, just depending on how kind of comedy you like. I would 100% recommend the movie if you are a female. I think this is a must watch if you are a woman, just because of just the overall message that this movie has and the relatability and it just being a very clever, well written comedy movie. And I would recommend for men too, just because this is the type of movie that a lot of the comedy bits you've seen in male driven comedies, but we're letting the ladies handle it. And sometimes in other past movies, it wouldn't have worked, but for this one, it 100% hit. and I give this movie a solid 8.
Awesome. So that's going to bring us to the end of our episode on Bridesmaids. And next week, we are going to continue our mini series on female driven or female led movies. Juan, it's your pick. What are we watching?
All right. Okay, next week we are taking a story involving swords,
I knew you were going to do
revenge,
this to me. I knew you were going to do this to me.
insane choreography, impressive wire work, and one of the most influential movies with martial arts ever made. And actually, no, we're not reviewing Kill Bill. We're going back to the movie that had almost everybody running on bamboo trees for like a year straight
Wow.
after this movie came. So next episode, we will be reviewing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Would you believe I have never seen this movie?
Oh, really?
Nope.
Really?
When it came out, I don't know what it was. I had no interest whatsoever.
Well, I think you're gonna be
And
surprised.
it's one of those movies that isn't as widely talked about nowadays, like in the current.
It depends. It depends on what circle you're in. It only because of the director's lasting impact overall. But for a long time, he was in the conversation in this movie in general.
I mean, the people who I know who have seen it, I haven't really heard too many negatives. So it's not like I'm going into it thinking it's going to be terrible. It's just, it wasn't one of those things that was really on my radar when it came out.
Fair enough.
But no, I mean, I'm looking forward to it because I always enjoy watching something for the first time, especially for the podcast, and see how I enjoy it or don't enjoy it. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So
No,
yes, join us next week for Juan's pick of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And with that, we would like to thank everybody for listening, and we would like to ask you to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It would really help us grow the podcast. And as always, give us a follow on our socials, which will be posted in the show notes. And until next time, thanks for listening and thanks for subscribing. Take it easy, everybody.
peace.